Hey everybody, Zee Garcia here. Welcome back to Unsung Gems. Today I'm going to be covering 5 games that begin with the letter S and I think deserve a little bit more love. Maybe they're not the prettiest games on the shelf. Maybe they're a little rough around the edges, but they deserve your attention just the same. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. These are a pretty distinct bunch of games here. Let's jump into it. Let's get started. My first pick for today is Savannah Tales, which is a sequel to Snow Tales. Snow Tales has done quite well. It's a great game. Savannah Tales is not as good as the first one, but it's a sharp game. It's not a looker. I will say that right away. I don't think it's a very attractive looking game, but it's a racing game. You are racing these ostriches along the way, and the way in which you have to manage switching paths from one to the other. Lanes basically, and then these will sometimes converge onto a single bridge that they are all going across, is going to create some problems, some bottlenecks. And then along the way there's also some of these tiles, and you make up this track modularly. Some of the tiles are going to have some special abilities, so you'll have things happen along the way to spice up the race and mess with what you're trying to do. It's a neat game. Plays quickly, is very smooth. It's not as mechanically surprising, perhaps, as Snow Tales, which had this really clever system of the dogs pulling the sled this way and that way. This one's more straightforward than that. But it is a little faster and just clever and funny and sort of silly and engaging. So, Savannah Tales, if you're looking for a racing game off the beaten path. Next up, I'm talking about Shanghaian. And this is one I've talked about a decent amount before. It's a 2-player only game in which you are trying to Shanghai pirates for your crew. And you are going to be doing this by rolling dice. So, there's a lineup of pirates in different colors and numbers on the table between the players. You're rolling on your turn 2 dice, and you are going to assign one of those after you roll them to one of the pirates. And the order in which they're lined up is the die they take. So the 5th one this way, they get the 5, if you choose to put the 5 there. At some point, the players can, instead of rolling 2 dice and assigning 1, they can call Shanghai. And at that point, whoever has the most dice on their side of each of these is going to take it. Very straightforward stuff. It's the twists on top of this that really make the game. For example, each of the colors you are going to score. If you have more, your total value in green is higher than mine, then your score for green is my strength in green. You have 7 green, I have 2. They're worth 2 points to you at the end of the game. Unless I have none. If I have none at all, then you score your own. You get 7 points. So when you run away with a color, it is very beneficial for me to get at least 1 point in that and plummet your ability to score strongly in that. And that's just one of the many twists. There's a few different ones, but I really like that kind of idea. It's all about manipulating a system that is clever, not too crazy, that is hard to grasp, but just makes for some juicy moments of tension in which I start to attack or target something and you don't want me to have that card. Really neat stuff. So, 2-player game. If you want something like that, spicy, some push your luck, some really good tug of war, Shanghaian is one you want to look into. Next up, I'm talking about Sky Tango. Sky Tango is a card game in which you're going to be lining up cards, and you have sort of sunrise and sunset cards, trying to line them up correctly, trying to not have to take a turn in which you cannot play a card, because then you have to sort of wipe away your progress. It's a pretty clean, straightforward system with some clever twists along the way. And one really neat thing about this game is that it is one of the few partnership games, meaning 2 people versus 2 people, that I really enjoy. I think the way it works in this one makes sense and is distinct from many other partnership games and just works smoothly. I'm happy to try this at 2v2, as opposed to many games which include rules for such a thing, and you can tell they are in there because you can, and not because this is a neat different mode that makes sense in what you are doing. So I recommend, if you can get your hands on this one, little card game, to give it a try, especially if this is an idea that appeals to you. This idea of playing on teams, 2 players versus 2 other players, and seeing which team can do the best. I love I split, you choose mechanisms. And Skyward, which is my next pick here, is a game that does it in a very interesting way. Now, I do prefer the game with fewer players. I think it's a great 2-player game. And I'll play 3, but more than that, it starts to get a little unwieldy with how many cards need to be split. But the idea of any I split, you choose game is whoever is doing the splitting will have a certain number of whatever. In this case, you draw a number of cards, and then they separate that into piles equal to the number of players. However they want to. They do not have to be equal piles. And then the players will pick from those, and the player who did the splitting gets the last choice. In this one, you have this sci-fi city up in the sky, and so you'll be hiring little characters and shooting buildings up into the city to join this space fleet, I guess. You are going to be using some of the cards as currency to pay for the buildings. You are going to have some special buildings that score bonus points at the end, some that do things in-game. You have, like I said, kind of currency to deal with. I really enjoy it. And at 2 players, you're splitting, I think, 7 cards or something like that. It just sinks. It's very quick to set up each of those rounds, have the players take a pile, and play out what they want to do or keep the ones they want to hang on to for the next round. And I also really like the look of the game. I think it's a sci-fi world, but it's very bright and cartoony. You got little robots, but they're cute little robots. And sort of, rockets and that, but they're adorable, a little steampunky, So if you enjoy that mechanism, or you haven't tried it maybe, and you come across this one, I'd recommend you check it out, especially if you're generally a 2-player game. This one gets tremendously overlooked, but it's very neat. So, Skyward. And my last pick for today is a game called Sugar Gliders. And Sugar Gliders is basically an abstract strategy game. It does have the Sugar Gliders theme on it, but it's really very much an abstract, in which you are going to be moving on this board that has tokens, scoring tokens, the little sugar glider, and he'll jump a specific number of spaces in a straight line based on where he was. You'll be collecting tokens from the board, trying to score, trying to deny your opponents from having too many good choices as to what's available on the board. And it's, a head-to-head positional puzzle, trying to do better than they do and force them to leave you good options while you leave them terrible options, right? Very neat. And it's one that I would recommend to folks if they're used to playing the sort of GIPF series of games. If you're used to playing something like Yinch, or you played Devon and you like that, any of those kinds of games. If you've played Battle Sheep, a little, blue-orange game that came out some time ago. If you like that sort of thing, just, looking at this puzzle and finding your path through it while messing your opponent up. And this one doesn't look like it's going to be that kind of game. It looks like a kid's game, the cover especially. It is not. It is neat and engaging and thinky. So there you go. Don't sleep on this one. It's a nice little game for 2. And that's going to do it, everybody, for my Unsung Gems for today, the letter S. Lots of good choices for today, actually. And I had a few that I didn't even get around to, but this is there's a lot to mine in this one. So let me know in the comments below some of the ones you've played that you think, more people need to discover out there. And that's going to do it. I appreciate you sticking around. My name is Zee Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.